we have some major macro events going down in the form of war, which I do believe Trump is trying to quell. And that's been obvious since day one. He's wanted peace between Russia and Ukraine. He's wanted peace over in the Middle East, in Gaza, between Israel and Hamas. And I understand there's a lot of political opinions on both sides of the ledger, but at the end of the day, everyone always seems to make these situations out to be easier than they really are. We're talking thousands of years of these groups of people basically hating each other and claiming it as their land. So it's no wonder Netanyahu would take an opportunity to strike Qatar, even though Trump does not approve of these actions. And stuff like this is definitely going to affect or play a role in markets, especially if things escalate, because at some point in time, when you have all of these things at their peak, the US has to further get involved, which creates uncertainty in markets. And if there's anything I know about markets is that they don't like uncertainty. So more often than not, they will sell off to protect their capital in the case of more volatility in these events. But here we have President Trump held a heated call with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu on Tuesday. A senior U.S. administration official has said, conveying deep frustration at being blindsided. In other words, they did not notify the U.S., even though the U.S. has been funding their military, about a strike that happened in Qatar on Hamas representatives. I'm assuming they were meeting in Qatar. Netanyahu said he saw a key opportunity and just took it. And this has been the case over and over and over with Netanyahu. Now, apparently, Trump told Netanyahu that the decision to target Hamas political leaders in Doha, Qatar's capital, was not wise, to which I'd probably say I agree. He was angry to learn that the attack occurred from the U.S. military. So for whatever reason, Netanyahu has access to the U.S. military and is able to call them into action with or without Donald Trump's approval. Not only that, but it struck a territory of another U.S. ally that was mediating negotiations on ending the Gaza war. So if anything, this truly looks like more of an act of war from Netanyahu. Apparently there were negotiations. He doesn't want the end of the war. He probably wants to obliterate all of Hamas. And again, my goal is not to be political on this one. My goal is to just share the information as it comes. So take that as you will. And so this is where things get a bit sticky, because a senior administration official said Trump, who has been a supporter of Israel, is becoming increasingly frustrated with Netanyahu, and arguably because he can't keep him on a leash. So you give him all these resources, give him all this support, all this money, and when you tell him to stand down so we can have an end to this war where innocent people on both sides are going to die, Netanyahu only actually escalates things. Now, this does not bode well for the U.S. because we have economic interests in Qatar when it comes to oil and support in the Middle East. And so if anything, this is looking like it's likely going to escalate. Trump is going to Qatar now to try to create peace. But if I were them, I'd be pissed, as Netanyahu signaled more strikes on Hamas targets could be coming. I say to Qatar and all nations, and this is quoting Netanyahu, and all nations who harbor terrorists, you either expel them or bring them to justice. But if you don't, we will. And so it seems Trump is actually having a very difficult time quelling tensions across the globe, as Russia also strikes Ukrainian government buildings in the largest air attack of the war. So think about all of the things that have happened since this thing started back in like 2022. Now things are actually worse or becoming more dire, as Russia launched its largest aerial assault of the Ukrainian war overnight into Sunday, deploying more than 800 drones and striking a government building in Kiev for the first time. And it's always terrible to talk about this, but it sounds really bad. Still, only 2 people were killed, or at least 2 people were killed, and 44 more have been injured. I would have expected more death. Luckily, for the largest aerial attack of the war, that's looking pretty good in terms of numbers, even though it's still very sad. In an interview with ABC News aired Sunday, Zelensky said that the U.S. President Donald Trump gave Russian President Vladimir Putin what he wanted at last month's Alaska summit between the two world leaders, which ended with no concrete deal. So imagine Trump, the deal maker, Trump, the peacemaker, at the end of the day is struggling both with the Middle East and now Eastern Europe. Trump told reporters on Sunday he will speak with Putin very soon to address the Russia-Ukraine conflict and expressed his disapproval with anything having to do with that war amid mounting frustrations over stalled peace efforts. Either way, we're continuing to fund or support Ukraine and fund or support Israel. But in both scenarios and situations, it seems that Trump truly wants peace. He's just having a hard time reining these world leaders in. And again, these conflicts, as they are ongoing and continuing to escalate, not de-escalate, will likely throw a wrench in the markets moving forward. And so although these pieces of news would lead me to move forward essentially with caution, at the end of the day, I am still risk on. Markets are actually looking really resilient and bullish, which we will cover on the charts here shortly, especially when you have someone like Paul Atkins backing Project Crypto, which will accelerate the US's adoption of crypto and digital assets. Let's have a listen.
I are calling Project Crypto, which will be the SEC's North Star in aiding President Trump in his historic efforts to make America the crypto capital of the world. The SEC will not stand idly by and watch innovations develop overseas while our capital markets remain stagnant. We're at the threshold of a new era in the history of our markets. As I mentioned earlier, today I'm announcing the launch of Project Crypto, a commission-wide initiative to modernize the securities rules and regulations to enable America's financial markets to move on-chain. The President's Working Group on Digital Asset Markets released the PWG report with clear recommendations for the SEC and other federal agencies to build a framework to maintain U.S. dominance in crypto asset markets. This report is the blueprint to make America first in blockchain and crypto technology. We will not watch from the sidelines. We will lead, we will build, and we will ensure that the next chapter of financial innovation is written right here in America.
And so this is a complete 180 of the SEC when it was under the reign of Gary Gensler. Now we are 100% pro crypto, and they're even doubling down through Project Crypto. That said, he also signaled support for super app platforms. This is insane, where trading, lending, and staking could operate under one regulatory umbrella, which actually simplifies things and will bring more innovation back into the United States and just be good for global adoption of crypto. This vision closely mirrors the EU's markets in crypto assets MiCA regime, which, by the way, so few companies have worked to be compliant with MiCA regulations, and one of those is RLUSD, the stablecoin behind Ripple, a move aimed at keeping the US globally competitive. And so speaking of Europe and MiCA compliance, we recently had a post from Christine Lagarde, literally just this day, the president of the European Central Bank, sharing a photo where she welcomed Paul Atkins to sit down and speak with her. Now, I don't know what they spoke about. I don't think anyone really does right now. However, Europe is also trying to play ball with crypto, and I think a meeting between these two is extremely relevant and important for the entire crypto market. So we'll see over the upcoming days and weeks what really occurred in this meeting if we get any more information. But either way, this is a very positive development.